like for someone who's been incarcerated and how they reintegrate, how they return to the community. Darryl graduated, he's ordained and everything, so this is Reverend Darryl Burton, and he finished seminary the year behind me, and he got ordained the year behind me. He says I'm older than him. I'm not sure about that, but just because I got done first, I'm not sure. But anyway, I just had the pleasure of knowing him in seminary and hearing his story, and he is just an amazing man for what he's been through to be wrongfully incarcerated and to come out and share such hope and love with all the world. So I hope you give him a warm round of welcoming, and then we'll let him go ahead with his telling.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Pastor Libby. And I guess I got two mics, or this mic. Is it okay? Can you still hear me? Yes. All right. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pastor Libby. And Salina, I've been here a couple of times, as I was sharing earlier, a couple of times at the annual conference. And so it was at, what was it, the event center? What was the center? Tony Pizza Center? Yeah, well, I know it was a big place. I do know that, yes. But at any rate, there's a lot of people. That's many years ago. So I'm glad to be back here in Salina. This is Wesley University. Is this where we are? Yeah. Yeah, Wesley University. I need to ask because I know I speak around, all over different places, and sometimes I just get confused with where I'm at. But at any rate, it is a joy to be here sharing with you. For me, it's a joy to be anywhere, considering where I was. I'm with my wife, my granddaughter's out there, my mother-in-law is right here. And we kind of move around just trying to share a message of really what we call hope and forgiveness, because I had neither one. And I'm going to refer to some scriptures. I'm going to refer to Luke's gospel, and I'm going to refer also to Matthew's gospel. So Luke 23 and Matthew's 5. And I said something earlier about how I want to talk about how Jesus was an innocent man, and I'm going to talk about 8 ways where they said it and they knew he was innocent and they still executed him. And also about this prison identification number, 153063. So did anyone hear me say that earlier? 153063. Remember that number. Keep that number, locked into, your thoughts, because I'm going to get back to that number. In fact, don't let me forget to get back to that number, because there's so much to this story to share until I could stand here for really literally hours and talk about this story of wrongful conviction. And so before I, tell the story, I just want to say, it's like any story that's told, it has 3 parts, right? It has an opening, middle, and an ending. That's the story. Whether you hear it, in a presentation, whether you hear it on the music track, whether you, see it, and watch it in movies or read it in books, all stories have that basic 3 elements. But the message for me, is really about hope and forgiveness, because I struggled with both. I had no hope. I was in a hopeless situation, and I was not a forgiving person, not at all. But at any rate, this story has it evokes all kinds of emotions. Part of it make you laugh. Some parts make you cry, make you upset. That's within this story. It evokes all kinds of emotions, and that's okay. It's a true human story. So whatever you feel, or whatever emotion that, comes to, you feel inside, is okay to express that. Is that all right? Yeah. So if I say something to make you laugh, go ahead and laugh. I may say something to make you feel a little emotional. It's okay to cry if you want to. Because it's a tragedy, and it's unfortunate that these stories are still happening. And so before I forget to say anything, Miracle of Innocence is an organization that I just gave you those fans, is that we work now, me and Lamont and Valerie, we co-founders. Now we help other innocent people get out of prison who've been serving times for crimes they didn't commit, mostly murder cases. And so we're working on a big case right now, Dana Chandler, who may, God willing, get out this week after serving many years, over more than 11 years, for a double murder she didn't commit. And so you may hear about that story, Dana Chandler. But anyway, let me just jump into this story. I was born in the city of St. Louis, near Ferguson, Missouri, on the west side. And my grandmother, she had a large family. She had 9 children. My grandmother had 7 girls and 2 boys. And she was the matriarch of the family. And in my grandmother's household, we went to church. We went to the Baptist church, and it was just, up to a certain age, it was no getting around it. It was no disputing that. If you lived under her roof, you was going to church. And the Baptists go to church a lot, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was a lot of church going. And so up to a certain age, and I got to that point where I said, Grandmama, I don't want to go to church anymore. She said, boy, one of these days you're going to need Jesus. And I said, well, I don't understand Jesus. I don't understand the Bible, so I just don't want to go anymore. She said, well, we're not going to make you go. I must have been 12 or 13. She said, but you just remember, you're going to need Jesus, boy. And I said, yeah, Grandma, whatever, right. And I dismissed her behind her back, not in her face. She would have hit me with a frying pan. So she didn't, you don't sass your grandmother. But she was right. That day came when I was going to need Jesus, and I needed Jesus, and I've learned now that I'm married to this beautiful woman that women are usually right, like 99.9% of the time. Ain't that right? She's right. She's right even when she's wrong. I mean, ain't that right? That's right. She's training me up in the way I should go, and now I'm older. I don't depart from it. But at any rate, that's a scripture. But here it was that, my mother, she was a copycat of my grandmother. And so she had 9 children. She just did it in reverse order. She had 7 boys and 2 girls. And of all of my brothers and sisters, I'm the darkest of the family. Some would say I'm the black sheep by birth. And so when my brothers would pile on and tease, and we all did our teasing, but when they would tease me, they would call me things like Oreo, chocolate chip, milk dud, midnight, lights out, shoe rubber, tar baby, jet black, blue black, black on black, triple black. You name it. Anything has something to do with being dark. They teased me and I didn't like it. I did my teasing, but when it was time for everybody to, turn attention to me and tease me, it didn't feel good. And so I'd ask my mom, Mom, what happened to me? Why am I darker than all of my brothers and sisters? What happened to me? Did you leave me in the oven too long? What happened? And she teased me too. Go on, baby, you just my little chocolate drop. And you calling me names too, Mom. I don't like it. Didn't like my dark skin. I was self-conscious, insecure. I was actually ashamed of my dark complexion. But this is what helped me get out of prison. Many years after the fact, when I get to the third part of the story, you will see why. And so here it was that a guy was pumping gas into his automobile one night, and a man approached and shot and killed him. And 3 or 4 people gave a description to the police the night the crime was committed. They said the man they saw commit the crime was about 5'5", maybe 5 feet 6 inches tall, medium to light skin. Medium to light skin. Well, look at me. If you put me in a room and turn the lights out, I'd disappear. I'd blend in with the darkness. I'm dark. How do you confuse me with light skin? No motive, no ballistics, no DNA, no confession, no fingerprint, no weapon, nothing connected me to the crime, with one exception. Witnesses, guys who came to court, raised their hand and gave an oath. They said, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. And they were lying. They were lying before God and anything that has something to do by the way of religion. And since God didn't do anything to these people, I said, well, there is no God. And if it is, then they making mockery of him. So don't talk to me about God. I didn't believe in God. I was never angry at God. I never blamed God. As human beings did this to me. And human beings, unfortunately, do other horrible things to other human beings. We've all seen that, in many instances where we've seen humans do, horrible things. I mean, wars are going on right now. Human beings do just some really nasty, evil things to one another. So I had this public pretender who I saw one time, and I'm charged with the crime of capital murder. Capital murder, espionage, and treason are the only 3 crimes in the United States. If you get convicted, you can be sentenced either to life in prison without parole or the death penalty. I saw this lawyer for 1 hour, just 1 hour, and then we went to trial. It was a 3-day trial, and I was convicted in less than an hour. It happened so quick, it'll make your head spin. But this is what upset me about the entire criminal justice system. Well, the whole thing was upsetting. But I had learned that the lawyer, the public defender, the judge, and the prosecutor, they had a sidebar. They was talking. No one knew what they were talking about except the 3 of them. And they was talking about another suspect who not only fit the description, but this other suspect, he had shot the victim on 3 different occasions. 3 different times he shot this man. The 4th time he shot and killed him. And the judge, the prosecutor, and my lawyer, they agreed not to let the jury hear that information, that evidence. Now, that's not justice. And I'm saying, how could they do that? How could they keep that from the jury? And they knew about these 2 drug gangs. These 2 drug gangs were fighting over drug turf. And that's why the guy had shot that man. They was feuding. It was just like the Al Capone story, the gangster story. And the lawyer who represented me agreed to that. How could my defense attorney be willing to go along with something like that? I hated the entire criminal justice system when I learned that. Every lawyer, every police, every prosecutor, every judge, every defense attorney, every snitch witnesses, anywhere in the world, for what a handful of people did to me. I had a lot of hate in my heart, and that's reading this message about forgiveness is what I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. I couldn't forgive those people. I couldn't forgive anybody that worked for the criminal justice system. And so they brought me over for sentencing. Capital murder is what I'm facing. And they waived the death sentence. And I think you can turn to the slide and put up the courtroom scene if you can. They waived the death penalty. That's where it all started with me. In a courtroom like this, and some of you seen those kinds of, courtroom settings. Some of you been on jurors. Some of you would be on jurors. But however, they waived the death penalties and they sentenced me to life without parole for 50 years plus 25 years consecutive. So that meant I had to spend 75 years in prison before I would have been eligible for parole. This is 1984. I'm 22 years old, so 75 and 22, I would have been almost 100 years old before I would have been eligible. Basically, they say, we're not going to sentence you to death by lethal injection, but we're going to sentence you to death by incarceration. To me, it's no difference. Either way, you're saying, I'm going to die in prison. And I'm innocent. At that time, I didn't think no one went to prison who were innocent. Just didn't think that happened. I thought I was the only person in the world, in life, went to prison as an innocent man. I thought the criminal justice system in the United States was the best in the world. Innocent people don't go to prison. Well, I didn't know the story about Jesus either, that I'm going to get to in a minute. But innocent people happen to go to prison. There are innocent people in prison right now. At least 1% of all American prisoners of 2.3 million people, that's 23,000 people who are in prison who are innocent. So that's a lot of people, at least 1%. And they say as much as 5%. So there are over 100,000 people in prison who are innocent, even as we speak. Well, here was another one of my motivators at that time is that my daughter, our oldest daughter, she was just 7 months when I saw her. And when I saw her inhaled in my arms, she was 7 months. I saw her 3 times. I didn't see my little girl again until she was 25. So I was separated from my child for all those years as an innocent man. And so it was not just one sentence, that they did to me, but it was one sentence that created 2 prisons because my little girl, she was also in a prison separated from her father. And she ended up in foster care. And her mother lost parental rights at some point. So it was just one domino tragic situation after another when they wrongfully convicted me. I had just enrolled in college, thought I was going to go to college and, get me a degree and take care of that little girl. Didn't get a chance to do that. Didn't get a chance to bond with her. So when they, sentenced me to all these years in prison, the judge asked the lawyer if the lawyer had something to say. And the lawyer said, no, I don't want to say anything. And I said, well, wait a minute, Your Honor, can I speak? And he said, yes. I said, well, Your Honor, this courtroom, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the police, the witnesses, I said, you're all a part of this conspiracy. You confiscated my freedom. You framing me, and I'm an innocent man. The judge said, well, look, I didn't find you guilty. Your lawyer didn't find you guilty. If you're mad at anybody, be mad at the jurors. That's who found you guilty. I said, but Your Honor, you saw those witnesses come in here, and you saw them lie on me and submit perjured testimony against me, and you can do something about it. He said, this court and no other court is going to overturn what 12 jurors of your peers have decided against you. And he was right. No court would. State court, federal, all the way to the Supreme Court. No court would overturn that conviction for many years. The last words I said to that judge is, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to fight this case till I prove that I'm innocent. Didn't know how I was going to do that because I was not a lawyer. I didn't trust lawyers. I hated lawyers, but I knew I had to learn the law as best as I could inside of a prison, inside of a jail cell. So they took me out of the prison. They put me in this, what they call 5-point shackles. Anybody ever heard of 5-point shackles? 2 shackles on my wrist, 1 on my waist, 2 on my ankles, 5-point shackles. And they shuffle us out just like this. And I can ask every one of you probably in this room, if you've been on earth any length of time, you've been accused of something you didn't do, right? And can I see by show of hands, someone ever accused about something you didn't do? Yes. You know how that makes you feel, right? But you can't imagine being put in a jail cell, in a cage. And I think we can talk about, this prison. That's where they sent me, to this prison, being put there for the rest of your life. Missouri State Penitentiary is where they sent me. The image of that prison you just saw. Time magazine wrote an article about that prison, and it was described as the bloodiest 47 acres in America. You never heard of that, have you? Well, if you Google the bloodiest 47 acres in America, and an image of that prison or a link to that prison is going to pop up. And it was, because every day in that prison, 3 men got assaulted, got stabbed. Every single day. Now, I didn't believe in heaven, hell, miracles, angels. I didn't believe in any of those things. But I knew evil when I saw it. That was an evil place, an evil encounter. And I mean top down evil, not just all the inmates, many of them, but guards, administrators, people who worked there. That was an evil place. And when they brought us inside of that prison, they opened these huge black gates and bars, and it seemed like it went in slow motion. And they drove this bus, what they called a gray goose, down inside of this prison, just a school bus painted over gray with bars around the windows. And when we got inside of that prison, it was a huge banner. And they made sure every prisoner who arrived at that prison saw that. We couldn't miss it. And it said, "Welcome to the Missouri State Penitentiary. Leave all your hope, family, and dreams behind." That's what they meant. No hope, dreams would be nightmares, family couldn't help you. And now I use an acronym for the word hope is hold on, pain ends. But sometimes it takes a very long time before that pain ends. Then when they got us inside of this facility, and I beg your pardon, ladies, they told us to strip down to our birthday suits. They took the shackles off of them. They said, "Now stand spread eagle." And we stood with our arms stretched out. And they sprayed us under our arms and our genital areas. They said, "Turn around, bend over, squat." And they sprayed us in our buttocks areas with some kind of bug repellent for lice, where every area of our body that had hair. And I guess they say, "Well, you're living like animals, so you must have fleas. So if you come in this prison, we're going to de-lice you," or whatever they call it. And then they told us to shower off, and we sprinkled off. And there's a room probably about as big as this room here with 30 or 40 naked men just waiting to be processed. And they gave us this prison identification number. The number they gave me, again, was 153063. And they stamped that number on everything that was connected to me: shirt, pants, coat, socks, caps, boots, underclothes. And I hated it. I hated that number. I mean, it's like you was dehumanizing. They was dehumanizing us. They was degrading us. We was, pretty much being branded like animals. And when they would call that number over the intercom system, they would say, "Burton, 153063. Report to your housing unit. Report to your job sites. Report to wherever, someplace in the compound, the prison compound." And I refused to go. I wouldn't go. And so the guards would come, and they would be upset. And they would say, "Burton, didn't you hear your number being paged over the intercom system?" I said, "No, I heard your number being paged over the intercom system. That's not my number. I'm not a number. My mother named me Darryl Burton." They said, "Well, if you don't obey that, that request, when that number is called over the intercom system, we're going to put you in the hole." And they was talking about put me in a place that was lower than where I was already, a hole where you're locked in a cage or a cell, just like this here. Go back, just like that. 23 hours a day with no human contact. Now that's a double man cell, but the hole is a single man cell. Some of them are double man cell. But when they was talking about putting me in the hole, that's a single man cell, just one person in a cell like that. No human contact, except when they bring you your food and put it through this chuck hole, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's the only human contact you have. And so they knew that putting up a person in a place like that, it'd make you lose your mind. You would literally go crazy. Because we're born to have human connection. We're born for community. We're born to have contact with one another. Don't you agree? Yeah. Well, it says in the scripture, no man or woman should live alone or be alone. And that's true. We are born and created to have interaction and connection with other human beings. So, well, in a place like that, they don't care. And they put me in the hole because I refused to obey that order. Well, a few days later, I was like, "Hey, let me out the hole." I obeyed that order when you called because I wanted to be out amongst other prisoners. I want to be able to get to the law library and work on my case. Well, here's a couple of stories. I won't, tell you too many of these horror stories because there are many of them. I got almost 25 years of things that I've seen that I can't unsee. That was horrible. What I saw other human beings do to other human beings that were evil. I had to fight in that place. There's no getting around it. And so I used to hear these unbelievable screams. These screams is like it was coming from deep within inside of a man's soul. And we'd ask, why was that guy screaming like that? Only to discover that 2 or 3 men, they were in his cell and they were assaulting this guy. They were, taking advantage of him in a sexual way. And these housing units, you can go to the next slide. These housing units, no, not that slide. Go back to that slide. These housing units, where they have several tiers that goes up stories. 2 or 3 stories with rows of inmates. And so this guy's screaming, and these guys are, they're taking, his manhood. They are actually, they are sexually assaulting this guy because he was sent to prison for harming women or children in a sexual way. And I don't know if you knew that or not, but those are the most hated people in prison. Have you ever heard that? Well, that's true. That's very true. And it's unfortunate because some of those guys were innocent. In fact, I knew a guy, he was sent to prison for killing a woman that he had never seen in his life. He'd never seen her. He lived in Illinois. He had family members in Missouri. He came over to visit his family, little 18-year-old white kid. And when he left leaving his family, going back to Illinois, he got pulled over by, some highway troopers or whatever, and they charged him with that murder. And he was telling me, I don't know this lady. I'm not even from this area, this county. I'm from Illinois. It didn't make any difference. They, got them a suspect, and they created a frame around this young man, and they sentenced him to prison for many years wrongfully, and he was assaulted over and over. And 6 months after I was released, he was proven innocent, and he was released. But we both had suffered, but he suffered a lot more than I did because of what he was charged with, for killing a woman that he'd never seen in his life. And that's unfortunate. And it's not like someone came up and apologized to him, because they don't. They just, just as they say, just go on with your life as best you can. I remember they put me in a housing unit, just like this here. The first day number 1, in a housing unit just like this, me and another guy. We've been assigned to 2 different cells. We had our bed linen and our clothes and our arms. He was going to a cell, and I was going to a different cell. The first day, we got behind what they call these JC gates. These tall gates, seem like they're 7, 8 feet tall. They bars as thick as your wrist. And when they lock that gate, that's the only way in. That's the only way out of that housing unit. There's only one way out of that housing unit, and that's through a door. It's off this, the side of this picture. You can't see it. But we walked about 10 feet after they shut that door. Boom! And we heard some rumbling. Boom, 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 and turned and looked around. The first day we saw 2 guys chasing 2 other guys, and they were stabbing them. They were stabbing these guys. The day I got into that housing unit, the day that I was released, which is my anniversary this month. In fact, in about, 10 days, no, and even about a week, August the 29th of 2008, that's when I was released. So a week from now, it'll be my anniversary. I've been home 14 years. But, thank you. But that morning that I was being released, August the 29th of 2008, they was rushing this man. He was on this gurney, this rolling bed. The guards was rushing him, and blood was just draining, just literally pouring off of this, this gurney. And they was rushing this man to the infirmary, the prison hospital. A guy had cut his throat from ear to ear, tried to decapitate him, and so much more, in the years that I was there. So many things that I experienced in that horrible place. But here's what I want to get to now. I want to get to the place where I was trying to prove my innocence. And so I began to work on my case. I began to file motions and pleadings with the courts, asking for a new trial, asking for an appeal. I wrote state courts, federal courts, Supreme Court, motions to every court you can think of. And every court denied me. It denied me so many times until that could be my middle name, Darryl Denied Burton, because the courts just wouldn't grant me any kind of relief. So I went on a letter writing campaign, and I wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters, like 700 letters from the United States to Canada, to Europe, heads of states, parliaments. I wrote presidents, governors, senators, representatives, congressmen and women. I wrote Republicans, Democrats, independents. I wrote Oprah Winfrey. I wrote the big O. Yes, I did. And they got in touch with me twice since I've been home. I'm like, well, you're a day late and $1 short. I'm out now. Don't tell Oprah I said that. I love Oprah. I got a book coming out. I may end up on a book club. But anyway, you know who else I wrote? I wrote the church. Because I heard the church supposed to help sinners, right? Well, I'm in the sinners club. The church wouldn't help me either. The church wouldn't help me. I said, man, I can't get help from anywhere. And then till I saw, this next slide on 60 Minutes. I saw this organization, Centurion Ministries, the first organization in the world that was helping innocent people get out of prison. So I didn't know about them. They started in 1980. I got locked up in 1984. But I saw them on 60 Minutes, and they was doing a program where they was sharing this story about this lady who had served 9 years for a murder she didn't commit, and she was being set free. So 60 Minutes was doing this segment. I said, man, they helping innocent people get out of prison. They got to help me too. Well, I discovered and learned that they were located in Princeton, New Jersey, and I got the address and I wrote them in 1990. And they wrote me back. And this is what they said. They said, yes, we help free innocent people who are in prison wrongfully. They said, but we get 1,000 requests from inmates every year. We're a small organization, so out of 1,000 requests, we take 2 cases a year out of 1,000, maybe 3. They said, if we take your case, it'll be 10 years before we get to it. 10 years before they get to it. This is 1990. So I thought, well, I got 75 years to do. Well, hey, if they can get me out in 10 years, it'll save me from 65 years I won't have to do. So I felt like I got the time. So I wrote them every year for 10 years, sometimes twice a year. You know when they took my case? 10 years later, almost to the date, in 2000. And they got me out 8 years after that, 2008. So that was 18 years from the first letter I wrote to that organization. I had already served over 6 years or more. So, but 18 years. But here's what things begin to change for me, is that this organization is called Centurion Ministries. In 1998, I wrote the most important letter I had ever written in my life. It was to Jesus Christ. In 1998, because that's the year had I received the death penalty, I would have been executed. Now, I didn't know Jesus' story, didn't believe in Jesus, didn't believe in God, but in 1998, I sent him a letter, literally pen and paper, as a challenge. Wasn't a prayer, wasn't a plea. And I said these words verbatim: Dear Jesus Christ, if you're real and you know all things, you and I know I'm innocent. If you help me get out of this place, not only would I serve you, but I tell the world about you. Sincerely yours, Darryl Burton. Didn't have a mailing address. Folded the letter up, put it under my mattress for 2 days and got rid of it. Had the guards found that letter, they said, hey, this guy's going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You better put him in a psych ward. He don't even go to church. He don't believe in God, and he's writing letters to Jesus. I don't know how many people write letters to Jesus, but I know I did. I mean, I don't want to see show of hands. Some of y'all probably, they would think you're losing it if you're writing letters to Jesus, but not really. But I did it, and I didn't think anything of it except when people came to me and asked me about Jesus and God and the Bible. I'm like, look, I've written him a letter, man. He's not answering my mail, so leave God out of this. We got to deal with human beings. Human beings is what I need to deal with. Keep God where God is. And that's how I felt. Until 3 signs. The organization is called Centurion. See the name Centurion? In Luke's gospel, as I said, I was going to talk about Luke's gospel, chapter 23, verse 47. When Jesus was being crucified, a centurion said, surely this man was innocent. That's where they got the name from. The second sign is the man who founded that organization, this little bald head man right there, and I can say bald head, we got the same hairdo. His name is James. One of Jesus' apostles' name is James. The third sign is the kicker for me, is the lead attorney who helped me get out of prison with a law firm downtown Kansas City. You see what her name is? Cheryl Pilate, as in Pontius Pilate. You see, Ray Charles, a blind man, could see somebody was trying to get in touch with me. My grandmother had died by then. Her words kept echoing in my head. Can't nobody help you get out but God. And I still wouldn't believe. I still would not accept God. Because, see, God, you got to show me a little bit more than that. I'm from Missouri. They call it the show me state. You got to show me a little bit more than that. Prove to me that you're real. Those are coincidences to me. Until someone challenged me and said, why don't you read the Bible? And if the Bible has red letters, those are quotes straight out of Jesus' mouth. I said, well, that's what I want to read, the red letters. What did Jesus say? Jesus said, love your enemy. Can you believe that? Love all these people I hate, all lawyers, all these people with the, justice system. He said, love these people? No, I'm going to hate them, Jesus, and I'm going to hate them forever, and amen to that. Thank you very much. That's how I felt. And the second thing he said was, pray for them. Pray for him. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I pray for him. Jesus, I pray a building for all one of them fools. That's what I pray. I don't know if you've ever been hurt by anyone, but it's hard to pray for somebody that doesn't hurt you. Am I right? And the third thing he said was, and this is again in Luke's gospel, and this is one verse that began to change and transform my heart. Luke's gospel 23, verse 34. When Jesus was being crucified after he was beat, spit on, whipped with a cat of 9 tails, a crown of thorns on his head till he bled. And then Luke 23:34, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He said, you got to forgive them. That's not possible. And I read that verse and I'm saying, how could this guy forgive these people? And they killing him and he's innocent. Now, remember I said I want to share 8 places where they said Jesus was innocent. Well, that's one, when he was being crucified, they knew he was innocent. But here, 3-4 times, Pilate, him and his wife, His wife said Jesus was innocent first. Then Pilate said it 3 times Jesus was innocent. That's 4. Pilate sent him to Herod, who said he was innocent. That's 5. Then this guy, this centurion said Jesus was innocent. That's 6. And then when Jesus was being crucified amongst these 2 thieves or these robbers, one of them said Jesus was innocent. That's 7. But here's the kicker. When the guy who betrayed Jesus named Judas, he came and threw the money back to the folks, the Pharisees, and said, hey, man, I betrayed innocent blood. That's 8 times. Recorded history where they said Jesus was innocent. And they still executed that man. An innocent man. Can you believe that? Now, I didn't have that many people saying I was innocent. I had only me and God. But Jesus had all those witnesses. And that story just became more profound for me as I kept reading about this guy, Jesus, and this forgiveness message. And I still couldn't forgive, but I began to pray for those people as Jesus requested. Pray for them. So this is how I started praying for them. I'm going to pray for them, Jesus. But man, you make them do the right thing. You know they lied to me. You better make them turn this around. I was so angry, filled with rage. I was praying through clenched teeth because I didn't want to do it. Then I gave up and I said, God, I just can't do it. It's too hard for me. And it's like something whispered to me in my spirit and said, no, Darryl, you can't forgive them. But I can forgive them through you if only you would let me. And I realized that's how forgiveness works. It didn't come from me. It don't come from me. It comes from God. He forgives through us. And I look back at that verse and I noticed Jesus couldn't forgive them either in his humanness. That's why he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgiveness can only come from God through us if we let God use us to forgive those who hurt and harm us. That's how it works. It don't come from humans. It comes from God. Forgiveness worked from God through us. And it taught me that God had to work something out of me. Anger, hate, bitterness, unforgiveness, work something into me. Love, grace, and forgiveness so God could do work through me. And that's why I'm standing before you today. Because have I held on to that anger and that bitterness, as Nelson Mandela said, that was another prison, self-imposed. I was putting myself in a spiritual and a mental prison that I would have never gotten out of if I had not found this thing called forgiveness. Now, I told you about that number, 153063, right? Here was the thing, I'll show those slides in a minute. But here was the thing about this number. There was a guy who was walking these walks. He was an inmate or convict or prisoner. I don't know what he was, actually. He could have been something from the darker world because he said something that was really odd to me. And he was going to all the new men, all the new prisoners' cells. And I don't know what he was saying to the other guys, but I know what he said to me. He said, oh, you one of the new guys that just got to prison. And I said, yeah. Well, what's up with you, man? So I'm real skeptic. I'm nervous. I'm afraid. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm angry. He said, well, I just want to tell you, in this prison, you're going to dance with the devil. I said, what, man? I don't want to hear that. I don't even believe in the devil. I don't believe in heaven. I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in any of that stuff you're talking about. Get away from me. I don't believe in the devil. And he stepped closer to that cell, and he pointed at that number that I was wearing over my left breast pocket. He said, you may not believe in God and the devil and hell. He pointed at that number. He said, but the devil believes in you. And he walked away laughing hysterically, a strange, eerie kind of laugh. Never heard a kind of laugh like that before. Heard some other inmates chime in with him and laughing. And I thought about that number, 153063. And when I added up the 1 and the 5, that was 6. I added up the 0 and 6, that was 6. And I added up the 3 and the 3. What was that? 666. He said, he believes in you. And man, you talking about gave chills all up and down my spine. And I literally had to fight and dance with what was evil in that place just to survive. So, didn't believe in all these things. I can't make this stuff up. But it's just right there for me to see. I'm from Missouri where God's saying, well, I'm showing you. How much more do you need to see? And then here's what I was able to do in order to get my freedom back. The lawyers, in fact, the investigators, they went back and they discovered that was a woman. She was at the crime the night the crime was committed. In fact, she was in the cashier's booth. She sold the victim the gas that night. So she was a few feet away from where it happened. But not only that, she came to my trial back in 1985. And when she saw who they had on trial, she had told the police the day of the trial. She said, "You've got the wrong man. That's not the man who committed the crime. That man is too dark." Too dark. Remember my dark skin, what I used to be ashamed of? I can kiss myself today. Boy, black looks so good on me. Blacker the berry, sweeter the juice, darker the skin, deeper the roots. I love it. I think Tupac, a rapper, said that. I like it, but at any rate. This woman was not a young woman. They found her in Baltimore, Maryland. She had moved away, and they brought her back to Missouri. And she had said, "Look, I told the police the day of the trial back in 1985 they got the wrong man." That didn't come out until 2007. Many years later, a miracle. That's why we call the organization Miracle of Innocence. They also discovered one of the key witnesses for the prosecution. They said he only had a couple convictions. Well, he had 12 convictions, many of them felonies. They said he was facing a couple of years in jail. He was facing 30 years in jail. He had been a known snitch and a police informant. He had done something like this in another murder case. He'd made deals. Anytime he'd get in trouble, he'd just come and lie on somebody to get out of his own trouble. And they knew that he was on record as being a perjurer. That didn't come out until 2007, all the way from 1984, 85 to 2007. Again, another miracle. The lawyers found his information. And that's what brought me back to society. So I was ashamed of my dark skin, couldn't get away from it. You may be ashamed of something about your body, you can't get away from it. Well, it may be a blessing in disguise. You just don't know it right now. But at any rate, it took them 25 years almost to get me, exonerated and proven innocent. And so today I am not bitter, but I am better. Because our God is bigger than anything we'd ever face. They arrested me, but God, he rescued me. And that's what I believe. And as I said to Jesus, you helped me and I'll serve you and tell the world about you. Well, I've been, I don't know how many places, even in Kansas, but just about every state in the United States, been to other countries. I've been invited to so many other countries, from Africa to Asia to, Japan to Saipan, Australia, Switzerland. I've been invited before the pandemic. I had a lot of requests to come and speak in these different other places. And so now there's a movie, in discussion, in conversation, a film, and a book that's coming out. And we have this gala that's coming up September the 9th. It'll be our 5th year anniversary. 5 years of working to get people set free. And I just want to say this here as I close, and I know Pastor Libby will have something she wants to share with you. But Dana Chandler, this case, and you're going to see this case. This is a big case. I just want to say this about Dana's case. Now, I had a really terrible, false imprisonment case, but this case is the worst I've ever seen because there is DNA, there's fingerprints, there's forensic evidence that excludes Dana, that shows she's innocent. And they still trying to prosecute this lady and take her to trial. She's in trial as we speak. This week, we're hoping that she get exonerated and proven innocent. But she's been in trial for 3 weeks. They had another suspect who they just, discovered last week, and they brought him forward because the 2 people who were killed, well, he had one of, the victims, he had the checkbook, and he was cashing checks about a month or 2 after the crimes. And so they said, how did he get these checks? And the prosecution and the police, they didn't investigate this guy. And so this just was discovered last week. So they got some gum that had some DNA on it. And guess what? The gum, when they discovered, whoever DNA it was to a man. It was not to a female or to a woman. They got all this evidence to show that Dana was not the person who committed this crime. But they charged her because it was her ex-husband and his girlfriend who was killed. And so they made this story up that a jilted ex-wife killed her ex-husband and his girlfriend or fiance, which wasn't true. In fact, she was in Colorado when the crimes was committed in Topeka. And they could show by some receipts she had, as well as from the time that she's supposed to travel from Colorado to Topeka. It just wasn't possible. All this information. And they framed this woman. And this is to top everything off, and I close with this, is that she is a middle-class white woman, educated. Now, if this can happen to her, and I know I'm looking at a lot of middle-class white women in this room right now who are educated, be careful, okay? That's all I'm saying. Be careful. Be mindful. And I know that may sound funny, but if it can happen to Dana, now it usually happens to poor people, people of color, more than anybody, because we can't afford good attorneys. But she had an attorney. She was educated. She was, smart, and she was Caucasian. It didn't make any difference. They took a story, they put her in a frame, and that's what we call a frame up. And that's what they did to Dana. So keep Dana in your prayers, and we're hoping that Dana's going to be released. And next month, she's going to be at our 5th annual gala. So thank you for allowing me to share with you all. Thank you so much. I don't know if